need to remember to look at my camera, which is like up.
Yes. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Viz Review for week 3 of Makeover Monday. And with me again is Michelle Freeman. Hello, Michelle. You look so happy.
Hello, Eva. I am so happy. Yeah, it's like 1,000 pounds have been lifted from my shoulders. And thank you again for moving Viz Review so that I could watch the inauguration yesterday, which was just so inspiring. And I hope that lots of other people found hope in it.
I'm sure people used the time wisely and actually watched it as well, and that everyone enjoyed lots of sunshine today and just a bit of, yeah, like you say, hope. But without getting political, this is Viz Review, and we're going to talk about global warming today. For those who are new to Makeover Monday, welcome. And if you're new to Viz Review, a very quick update on how this works. So I have collected a bunch of vizzes that... Well, we do have quite a few similar visits this week, just the nature of the data and, line charts are just great. So there will be quite a few line charts. We might skip some, but I've collected just a bunch of different ones. If your visit is not among them, please don't despair. Just listen to the feedback we have for everyone else anyway and use that to update your own. And we're going to go through in chronological order and just see how far we get. We have a hard stop in an hour, and if you would like, you can comment on the live chat on YouTube, get to know each other. If you have a question, maybe just put in all caps, the word question in front of it, so we know if there's quite a lot of chit chat that we can, kind of just skip to the question. And with this, let's quickly look at data.world. So this is the visualization we're making over, and he added a GIF, so he added an animated version of this data for everyone to look at, and there's the links and everything. One point I want to make, in case you are still posting to data.world, you don't have to. I mean, you can if you want. There are 49 people commenting here, or 49 comments, but we never look at it. We completely don't pay any attention to it because we can't monitor 2 platforms at the same time. So don't feel like you have to post your visits. I know people do. Maybe they don't have Twitter, but we just don't even see these. And sometimes I go in there just for interest and I see really good stuff, but it's not on my radar. And we haven't used it for 2 years. So if you're still doing it and you think, oh my God, why does no one ever respond? That's the reason why. And you can save yourself that time. Now, this week, we're looking at this really cool animated or interactive visualization. I hope you had a chance to scroll through it. It was really good storytelling, and I'm curious to see what people created this week. So let's jump over to Twitter, and we're going to go top to bottom in chronological order. And the first viz we have is from Megan, who... We only have an image. It looks like it's a Tableau viz, but it's only an image. So we're going to bring that up nice and large on the screen. Should be easy enough for people to see. And feeling hot yet. Earth's global warming by season. And curious, Michelle, if you have any thoughts on this that kind of jump to mind straight away.
So, I really like how she's got the timeline in the middle and the above and below. I'm not really sure what the different shades are indicating because it's not noted here at all. And
yeah,
I guess
it just says red shows values above the baseline, blue shows values below the baseline, which is, to be honest, I think is self-explanatory because blue is like in the minus area and red is above. What I'm not sure yet on is it says global warming by season, but I don't see anything about seasons in here.
And maybe that's what the color variations represent, are the different seasons. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really sure that's adding value, or at least as it's represented here, because it's hard to compare them with them stacked on top. It's also really wide. I like the border though.
Yeah, I think the design, it's got really good elements, and it's got some where I think, I'm not quite sure. And I don't know about the title, Feeling Hot Yet. I would prefer the subtitle to be turned into a title, something about, this is about global warming. Because sometimes, I guess, if it's very catchy, it might require a bit of extra thinking to actually figure out what's going on. But in general, I like that it's nice and clean. It just doesn't say anything about what these values are. Like, I mean, it says the annual temperature, how far it departs from the baseline, but there are no values, there's no scale, and because it's just an image, we don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, then we have Luther, and I just want to do a quick reminder that please, when you're posting your links, to also include a static image, because it helps a lot with us going through these visits. So especially, for whatever reason, Tableau Public or Power BI or whatever, don't, if there's like some lags, then we can always look at the images. But if you don't have an image, then we can't look at it at all. So Luther has done a month-by-month breakdown for the northern and the southern hemisphere. And okay, so within each month we see the years. How much it's gotten warmer. I've just got to read the subtitle. So compared to the base period, I've studied risen steady over the last 40 years. It's been greater in the northern hemisphere, with the winter months in both hemispheres experiencing the greater rise. Okay. So for the northern hemisphere, I think I can see that the winter months, so January, February, a little bit in March, but also November, December, that they are higher than in the summer months. But I don't see it in the bottom section for the southern hemisphere. Like, I'm looking at June to August. It doesn't look that much different from the others, so I find that a bit hard to see what's stated in the subtitle.
Agreed. Maybe adding a reference line might help with that. And I think possibly these and separating the graphs onto two separate worksheets, you could still fix the axis so that you have you're comparing apples to apples. But I think that might make it a little easier visually, and then you could maybe play with where the labels are a bit. Feels really wide, but
yeah, it does feel wide. And one thought I had is when you look at seasonality, then I wouldn't do January to December. I would do kind of spring all the way through to winter. So I would probably start with March. Or I would have December as the first month in the lineup, just so that you have the full season. Currently the winter is split. So winter for the northern hemisphere starts in December, ends with February.
Well, and it's also challenging because when you're looking northern, southern hemisphere, winter in the southern hemisphere is the opposite months.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's confusing to compare seasonality like that, or to suggest that the seasons are related.
Yeah, I agree. It should be like a shift, so it doesn't have to be the months, or it could be that you have winter and then you have as little subtitles the month that correspond to winter. And Kevin Wee made a good suggestion to maybe have separate color legends for northern and southern hemisphere, so that southern hemisphere values are not dictated by the northern hemisphere, but they have their own scale for the color.
That's a really good suggestion. And I wasn't really sure what the color scale was representing here, unless it's just largest change. So that having an explanation for that would be helpful. Yeah,
and I think what we always have to take into account is that Northern Hemisphere, there are a lot more people that do a lot more polluting. So for me, it's probably quite logical that there's, more rise in temperatures. But yeah, so they probably should be considered kind of separate from each other, and to combine it, we have the global values as well.
Agreed.
Okay. And then let me just close these links. Then we have Sam Epley, and let's check out what he created. Okay. Yes, because I saw, so there's some icons for winter. I'm guessing this is spring. And then summer and autumn. And global northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. or the tooltips are a bit obnoxious for me. They're a bit large and wide, and sometimes if they cover up text, I find that a bit annoying. So I would try to make them a smaller box, like overall smaller. What's your thoughts on this viz?
So I think it's really nicely formatted. I like how you can highlight and change with the icons. There's a lot of interactivity. It's interesting. I just saw that you can change it from the actual 3-year moving average. So some nice animations here. I love the font at the top. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. I find it might need a bit more space, the whole content, because there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot going on. I think all the elements are good. They just need to be spaced out more, because there's in a fairly small amount of space, we've got the subtitle, which is a good description of what's going on. We've got the season selector, which changes based on, what hemisphere no, it doesn't. Okay, so that should be changed. So that if I select Southern Hemisphere, winter should be June to August, and also February is spelled wrong. So that needs to be dynamic. But we've got all these elements in that top third in a fairly condensed amount of space, so I would spread it out more. I don't know if I love the icons, to be quite honest. And I think in a presentation, I like the more skinny, I don't know how to call them, like the icons that are not solid colors, but just the outline. But I think if you use them as a selection tool, I would probably look for some potentially solid icons. Might work better, but it's up to you. I'm not sure about the white background for the chart. It looks a bit kind of stuck on.
Yeah, and I think the chart is very wide, so you could probably bring it in some and maybe reorient some of the elements. So maybe the selections are vertical instead of horizontal.
Yeah.
That might, I think, make it a little less tight.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's some good suggestions there. And next up, we have Ceci.
Ceci's been participating pretty regularly.
Yes. It's great to see people come back over and over again. Okay, so Kevin said, I thought the temperature should be in Celsius. So I asked Andy this today because I only created my viz today. The puppy has turned my life upside down and I have no time for anything. And he said, because I said in the original viz, the temperature was in Fahrenheit. And Andy said he couldn't get the data from the original viz, like the exact same one. So he got a data set they were referring to, and he is pretty sure that in that data set they are talking about Celsius. So what you do with that information is up to you. So if you are showing it in Celsius, label it as Celsius. If you are converting it to Fahrenheit, which I tried and failed to do because it just wasn't quite working for me in a hurry, then, by all means, convert it to Fahrenheit if you'd like. Okay. But I understand if people got tripped up by the data not having any labels in it for the unit, and then the original viz having Fahrenheit as a label. So just for those who were wondering. Now, Ceci has this viz global warming trend for the past 140 years is alarming. Okay, so she's got a bit of a description first, and then, we can change to global. Oh, this might also suffer from the issue of being a bit wide when you go to... I love the change between the hemispheres and global, but it might be a bit too wide when you have just the one line. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, and I really like being able to look at it global versus by hemisphere. But I think adding more padding in there and separating the charts a bit more would really allow you to focus, and maybe making it a bit longer so that they don't look so short and squat. Really like the title. It is alarming, and I love having that trend line there. I think that's a really nice touch. The charts are really clean. It's pretty easy to see the changes. I do like having the change in color over time.
Yeah, I think overall I really like the simplicity of it. What I struggle with a bit is it's a fairly large viz. I mean, let me see. Okay, maybe it's not so large, but it's large enough. But the line itself, the actual data, is actually just a fraction of the page. There's a lot of empty space above the charts, inside the charts, because of like zero labels. There's just 1880 and 2020, which is okay. But I find, why is the line so small? Why are these charts not bigger? Could they be? Because when you put the northern and southern hemisphere on the same chart, you actually see the difference. I find it much harder when they're next to each other to really see it. But that's just my 2 cents.
No, I agree. And I have to say, for all of these, I'm curious, when you did yours, did you separate out the seasons? I didn't.
I did mine by month and year, and I did it at a global level because I was in a hurry, quite honestly, but also because I just felt I want to have like a very simple snapshot because I kind of designed for a global audience. At first I was going to just look at the northern hemisphere, but then I thought, no, I really want to tell like a global story, because I also think even if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're going to be affected by what happens in the north, and by the stuff we do to impact the environment positively or negatively. So I felt global kind of spoke to me more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Oops. Then we have Ashley Zhang, and this is, I think, a lot of skinny bars. So John Wilson asks, he says he's a beginner in Tableau. Can you recommend any courses? That's not really what this is about. So you're welcome to join us without a course. There's plenty of free online tutorials, and you're already on Andy's channel, so you can find lots of information there. I've seen people's participation in courses or the results of them. So based on that, I'm not going to make a recommendation, but maybe someone else, if they have anything good, could suggest something. Now, Ashley's viz, now I'm just testing this, so if I go to 100%, it feels quite small. I don't know if it's just my big screen, but I'm going to zoom in. The challenge with zooming in is you'll always get some elements that become a bit blurry. But, Michelle, what do you think of these, like, super skinny bars that actually show the, below zero, above zero, how temperature is getting warmer?
I think this might be one of those cases where I know it's not necessarily best practice, but I actually really like them. I like that you can see the color variation with the skinny bars, that it's a little bit harder to see that when you're doing it in a line chart. So I like that.
And yeah, what I like about it is you do see that, I mean, it's a bit hard because the background map creates a bit of extra noise. I don't think it's necessary to have it. But I'm glad that, she's got the northern hemisphere lines or bars in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere ones in the southern hemisphere. What I like is that you can see those kind of skinny orange bars in the past, around like the turn of the century. And then they kind of get more and more, I think, as we go into like the 30s and 40s, or 20s, yeah. So my assumption here, and I haven't tested this hypothesis, but in the north, we're seeing this in the 20s, starting to really become consistently red. I assume it has to do with the wars, quite frankly. Don't quote me on it, but that is my assumption, because we're seeing another big spike in the 40s, and then as like the economies start to kick off again. So what I really like is that here it's so easy to see, oh my god, now we're in the red, and we have been since 1994, I think, consistently, which is scary.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't mind the map as much. I think it maybe could be a little bit lighter so it's less distracting. But yeah. It actually is a pretty decent size on my screen, so okay, it may just be your screen.
Yeah. All right. And then we have, is it Dara? I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. I'm ashamed to say, because he's participated in Makeover Monday before, but maybe I've never had to say it.
Dara looks right, but I'm not sure. I'm horrible at pronouncing names.
Same last name as me. Okay, let's zoom in. All right, feeling hot, hot, hot. So the title's got this nice, kind of color gradient or diverging color scheme of going from blue to red. I think the choice of blue and red is perfectly fine this week because most people would associate that with cold and hot. I mean, it's pretty much on any faucet or tap that you find out there in the world, right?
Agreed.
Okay, so we have, I think these are they squares? I think they're squares and they're sized by something. I'm guessing the deviation, like the size of the deviation, and then colored accordingly. Again, this makes it easy to see that things are getting a lot worse. And the one thing I find hard, I mean, I know the data by now a little bit, but why are there 12 lines? Like, there's no labeling for each of the lines, and I think it would be good to even just have a little J on the first one or a little January and then a little December at the bottom, because people will immediately know what you're talking about.
Agreed. I don't love having it run to the edges, although that may just be a design choice, and I completely respect that people make decisions because that's their image of their design. I find the year labels really hard to read.
Yeah, that's true.
The differentiation in the sizes is hard to see because the boxes are so small. So I find it more distracting than helpful.
Yeah, I find with the year labels, this is another case where having gray on black just doesn't work. You see how the text, the earth is heating up, that's the best contrast. That's how I would label them. Or at least the really light gray from the text below. And I agree with you on the boxes. You meant the actual data, right? All those little squares?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but I also think that he probably wanted to try something a bit different because a lot of visits this week will end up looking quite the same, which is just natural. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I went with the heat map too, so I applaud ingenuity. I did notice on the tooltips he's using both a down arrow and a negative sign, so
let me jump back.
You only need one of those.
Yes, I'm quickly jumping back because I had already closed my tab, but let me bring that up again. So, oh yeah. I think, and I probably prefer the down arrow because it's just so much faster for me to see than the minus. But yeah, up to him to choose. Next one is Aditya, and there is... Oh, and by the way, for those who are new or who have been around, Charlie, while still surely watching from the sidelines, is not co-hosting anymore, so you don't have to tag him. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't mind, but he's unlikely to respond. So, first thing I noticed is the typo in the title, which is not a great start. Temperature anomalies, not anomalies. It's a small thing, but when it's in the title, it always is so noticeable. So I recommend everyone double-checking their spelling. What's your first impression, Michelle, of this viz?
I guess the cactus and the... I'm not sure the icons are really adding any value.
I've never seen a red cactus before. It's like I would, if it was green, I'd be like, okay, cactus, desert, dry, hot. But a red cactus to me is just like my brain cannot compute this.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure temperature anomalies says what's happening. I mean, is it that they're an anomaly, or is that the temperature is rising and it's pretty clear in the data? Because it's pretty clear in the line chart.
Yeah, exactly. I think I agree with the title could say a bit more about the actual topic, because temperature anomalies also sounds very scientific, makes me personally switch off a bit. But if someone told me, like Greta Thunberg, for example, says so aptly, our house is on fire, it's like, okay, what house is on fire and why? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd format the tooltips as opposed to going with the default, and maybe adding an axis label for the numbers.
Yeah, especially because I'm not sure. So we've got 12.26. I think that's global. Oh, 12.26. That's so these are. This is wrong. I think these are this is per year summed up all the months, which you cannot do.
Right.
You can't just sum up all the temperature changes into one big change. So you will have to bring the month level detail in there. So you could do it at a month level, so it's more granular, which I would prefer because it's going to be the most accurate. So yeah, the values are wrong, which basically means back to the drawing board, fixing up the values that were used. And I want to come back to the icons because I think the issue I have with it is, a snowy icon makes it sound to me like, or gives me the impression that, oh, it's going to be really, really cold, or the cactus, maybe it's really hot or dry. Well, it's getting hotter, but it's not about it being really cold or really hot. It's overall it's shifting, kind of in a bad way. And I think those icons don't really do it justice, because you might have, a really nice year because where you live, well, it's nice and warm, but it's not super hot or super cold, and you don't notice the changes as such. So I don't know if they really make people tune them in the right way, I suppose.
Agreed. And a cactus, I think of more as a climb, like in the desert.
Yeah.
That's just always warm there, which does indicate warmth. But
yeah, maybe more something like fire, right? Like a flame or something. That because if it's dry and hot without rain, there will be more fires. That might be a more logical icon, but I would just say clear of icons, full stop. That's just me though. And I see that Charlie has joined us just in time.
Fantastic! Hello, Charlie.
Yeah. I hope he's having fun with Smudge the kitten.
Yes, there need to be more Smudge pictures.
Yes, yeah, we haven't seen many Smudge pictures lately. Okay, so Brandon commented, I wish more people had called out that this is based on deviations from a reference period. Yes, that's a good point, because this is not to say, in 2020 it was 1 degree hotter than 2019. These are all the comparisons to the average for the period from 1951 to 1980. So, it's a bit to get your head around, but it is a good one to call out. So let's see if Mikhail did that. And he has a spider chart. Okay, so spiral of global warming. And it looks like he has a floating element for his color legend, which is covering up his title. So maybe
I'm Team Tiled.
Yeah. Yes, I'm totally always putting things in a tile structure. Okay, so he has put that in there. Global temp, so it should be temperature, not temperature. Anomalies from the 1951 to 1980 means. I'd maybe explain that in a bit a few more words, because I don't know if that makes sense to everyone. So maybe just say, this is how the temperature deviated from those means across, a longer time period. I really love the layout. What do you think of that?
I think the layout is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure. I don't think this is a legend that's covering up the title, because he's got the legend down at the bottom.
Oh, maybe it's meant to be like an underlining thing.
I think it is. And also, I would expect a legend would start at the lowest value and go up to the highest value. And this has variation in the... So I don't know if it's an overall. So it would probably be valuable to know what it was that it's representing.
Yeah.
I mean, really nice spacing. Well, I love the look of the chart. I'm not entirely certain how to read it.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same, because there was an animation in a Viz that we did many years ago, where it kind of builds up from the inside out as you go through time. And I think there could be a case for just a little how to read this chart, or even just an arrow that says 1880 is in the middle, and it looks like there's a row. Okay. Yeah, so there's one line for each year, and then of course you have the months being each of these axes. Yeah, to make sure people understand, the most recent years are all on the outside. But aside from that, I don't know if I would change much. I mean, I haven't read all the text, but I think it's a really simple design, just having nice big title, nice block of text, and then a really sharp looking chart.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the text is very appropriate and great supporting background as to why the temperature is rising.
And I think this week, and feel free to disagree with me, but this week for me, the data, the visualizations we build of the data, they're not to necessarily give us the exact value for each single month and each single year. It's to show things have gotten really bad over 140 years. And I think there are many different ways to show that. And if I wanted to know what's the value in July 1954, I would be lost with this, because I would have to scroll very carefully until I hit the right year. But that's not the point of the viz. The point is to show it's really bad. And for that reason, I think this week it's not so much about each the very precision. It's more the big picture. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree.
All right. And then we have something kind of going to the same direction of spirals. Nikhil, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I do want to point something out, and this is just my opinion. You don't need to have so many tags, or what are they called, hashtags, in your tweets. Makeover Monday 2021. I mean, by all means use it, but we only monitor the Makeover Monday and the Viz Review hashtag. I find it sometimes quite hard to look at tweets that have so many hashtags, because I'm not sure what I'm meant to pay attention to, much like in a Viz. I think use the spaces and the characters for text rather than hashtags. I know people want to have, eyes on their Vizes and likes and retweets, but I think if you just do good work, that's going to speak for itself. So let's have a look at this radial bar chart. I'm trying to... Do you know a game called Mikado, by any chance, Michelle?
I do not. What is Mikado?
So Mikado is kind of like, you imagine having really large toothpicks the size of a chopstick, so they have a pointy end on both sides, and there's always... they all have different stripes on them, and you hold them like you would a bunch of spaghetti, and then you let them fall to the ground, and you can pick them up, and you can't touch or move another one while you do it, but you can use another stick to lift the next one off. And this is what it reminds me of, because it's got all these sticks with the really bright colors on them. That's why I was wondering if anyone outside of Germany has played Mikado.
I think we call it something else, and I know we played something like that with the kids when they were young.
Pick up sticks or something?
I think actually, yeah, just pick up sticks.
Okay. Anyway, little detour to my childhood. What do you think of... Do you think this is an easy way to interpret the data as a, end user or audience?
Not so much. And I'm a little confused what the red and the blue charts or lines together are represent. Well, it's the northern and the southern.
I thought it was cold and hot.
No, there's a little legend to the right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare, and
okay. Well, I find that confusing, because to me, when it comes to temperature, the association with this orange and blue, at least that's what it looks like on my screen, would always be hot and cold, not northern and southern. And so here I'm guessing when it goes to the inside of the circle, that's when we have negative. So we have colder temperatures than the reference period. I'm trying to see, where does the data actually start? Because it seems to start in 1950, right?
Yeah, the years that... It's sort of like just random years are labeled. Because there are 4 of them. I like that he's got ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the bottom right.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different, well, not a lot of different colors, but I would probably stick to fewer colors, maybe.
Yeah, and I just don't know if this works for me because it looks like northern and southern hemisphere are additive, and they're not. You can't, I mean, I don't know if the blue one is behind, but
maybe it's just that they're not stacked.
But it makes it look like the southern hemisphere has heated up more than the northern hemisphere, which it hasn't. So because the blue sticks are longer than the red ones. So I wonder if that's even the right label. Huh. So when I go, for example, between 2000 and 2020, all the blue ones point out above the orange ones. So it looks like they have heated up more. But that's not the case. The southern hemisphere has not gotten hot by as much or, varied as much as the northern hemisphere. So I think this needs a bit of a rethink, especially with colors as well. The text is a bit small for my liking. I've zoomed in already and it's still quite small.
Mm-hmm. I can't read the subhead underneath. It's getting hot in here. The click on any spike.
Oh yeah, then you can see the monthly change of that year on the left. So January, February, March.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
I would put that title over the actual chart.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because otherwise you get the title, then you click on a spike, but then you have to move your eyes to the left. Also because the changes are quite subtle, it's decimal points. So you don't really see much happening from the corner of your eye.
Yeah, and I also feel like the two text boxes at the top I don't think they're aligned.
Mm-hmm. The right one seems higher, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if the text boxes on the right are aligned either. It's harder to...
Okay, well, hopefully this is helpful for Nikhil and he can make some updates there. Then we have Eduardo, and he's used little dots instead of lines. So I'm guessing that for each year he has the 12 different months.
It looks like confetti or sprinkles.
It does, and it means there's a lot of color.
There is a lot of color.
So what I would love in the top chart would be the global... Sorry, it's the global already, but to have the single line in the middle, kind of like Andy did it, because then you can see, okay, this is how the months vary, but what about overall? Because while you can see the trend shifting up, it would be nice to have a little bit more precision in there. Okay, so if I change the hemisphere to northern, it gives you the hottest and coldest months. But maybe it should be coldest and hottest months because it starts with the coldest months and then it goes to the hottest months. But if we go to the southern hemisphere, it should be... Okay. Yeah. That's really interesting that in the southern hemisphere, the coldest months were also what is traditionally their summer. So I'm not sure what this is about. Is that correct? There's no tooltips.
Well, and it's not that they're the coldest, it's the biggest difference
change
from the mean, correct?
Yeah.
So that's not really an accurate way of describing it.
Yeah, so I think overall it's a bit colorful and the colors are not explained. So if you use all these colors, at least tell people that these are for the different months, if that's what they are. And then a bit of a renaming of that ranking table. Plus, I don't know what value it adds. Like, what am I going to do with that information? Knowing that December 1917 was the fifth ranked month was the fifth biggest change in temperature, negative. It's just a bit, I don't know if that's going to give me anything of value, because this is all stuff in the past what we need to tell people is that the future looks grim if we continue what we're doing. All right, shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm interested to hear what you think of Ravi's viz, because I saw the image and I had like an immediate thought in my mind, and I'm wondering if you're going to say the same thing. So I'll let you go first. Okay, here we go.
I think I'd like to separate each of the blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit of space in between, though.
You mean the global northern and southern?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that may just be a personal preference. Oh, interesting. So the chart at the top highlights, but it highlights, but it doesn't make it actually easy to see anything, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really tiny. I think it's a really nice chart, but it's really tiny.
And the problem is with the highlighting, so if I hover, the rest of the table becomes grey, the rest of the heat map. So that sliver of light color, I don't even know what color it is. It's like impossible to tell it all. Because that was my main point, that it looks so faded, the main chart. Like,
yeah,
everything's really grey. And a way to get around that is to use an even number of color steps, because that way you don't have a grey. It either has to be below or above 0. There's nothing in between, and you either get blue or you get red. It could be shades, so you can use 8 or 10 different shades, but there's not going to be a 0. So I would tinker with that for as long as it takes until it looks more like I can tell, because at the moment it all just looks very samey, and I'm not alarmed looking at this viz, and I hope people would be alarmed.
I really like, the font and the text that goes with it, the story. I think the fact that, even though the colors are very intuitive, having the Northern Hemisphere, it took me a minute, just having that colored in red. I'm like, wait, is that the Northern Hemisphere? But
yeah, it's a bit confusing. There's 2 different color legends. Because also climate change in the title is red, and then it says Northern Hemisphere, Northern, and then everything on the right side of the main chart is red. So it's a bit confusing. Okay, shall we move on? And okay, so the next one I picked because I was a bit confused by the image in the middle of this viz, and I want to understand it more. So I'm interested in your perspective, because okay, in the middle it says it's a hoax. Like what?
It's a hoax floating on an iceberg.
Or is the joke that the people saying it's a hoax are, like you say, floating on an iceberg, melting away under them? I'm just not sure. I don't know if I personally would not put something like that in my viz because I believe in science. So I don't know if this joke just doesn't land with me, or whether it's meant to be serious, like it's a hoax. But something to consider, because if that's my reaction, then maybe other people have the same reaction.
Yeah, it feels a bit flip. And I'm not sure if the intention is to say it really isn't a hoax, I'm not sure that's coming through well.
Yeah. Because also it looks like the text on the little house is put on top. So you could also put there, it's not a hoax. So how does this work? Does the image... Is the house stuck on top of the iceberg? Because the line of the line chart goes over the ice thing, but then the house is on top somehow.
Yeah, I don't know if that's another issue with floating elements, not rendering where you want them to.
Yeah. And then we have a viz in tooltips as well, which I don't know if it's... what is the line showing? Because the Viz in Tooltips gives me 3 different numbers for each data point. Which one is the one I'm looking at? That's what I'd like to know.
It's showing the global, and I only know that because of the label on the 102 matches if you hover over the Viz in Tooltip.
Yeah.
So explaining what the main line is.
Yeah. And then there's a typo of Fahrenheit is not spelled like that. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add here.
No.
Okay.
Although I think you could probably make it smaller so that it fit on one page.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay, we have another radial Viz, which I'm interested in looking at because it's different from the other ones.
Yeah.
Save the world.
I like this.
I do too. I would just like to be told how to read it because I know it's probably meant to be like just a very impressive poster that doesn't need much explanation, but I don't think it's self-explanatory because it just says years. Like the years with the arrow could be like, oh, are we going back in time? Is this a time machine? What, rather than saying like one small label that says 1880 and the tooltips need to be formatted, and one small label at the very end that says December 2020, because then we can all make assumptions on, we're going over time, from the inside of the spiral to the outside, because I think the spiral itself looks really, really cool.
Yeah, and this is a case where even though the size of the bars you can't necessarily see the differentiation as well, it feels like it goes with it better.
Yeah.
So the temperature as it rises, the bars are getting bigger.
And I think otherwise it probably would look a bit odd if they were really skinny on the outside and the gaps would be so big.
Yeah. I think I'd rather see the text at the top than on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's too easy to miss at the bottom.
Yeah.
Sort of buried your lead.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Let's see if we can fit in a few more. Let me have a think. Priyanka. Yeah, let's have a look at Priyanka's Viz. Because it's a little bit like a mix between a heat map and a dot plot. Also, okay, let me zoom in. Global warming is real, so I can choose the global. Oh, it makes my eyes water because it's like my vision is blurry, but this is what are those things called? I haven't used one in so long. Those maps where you have what are they called? No. Anyway.
I'm not sure, sorry.
Yeah, you've got this like blurry kind of circle thing going on, but I find that really hard to look at because it makes me think my vision is blurry and then my eyes get all watery. Also, okay, so the chart below displays the changes in temperature over the years for each of the 12 months. So it would be good to include the change in temperature compared to what?
Yes. I don't know that the axis lines are necessary.
Yeah, they break it up a bit. I think they wouldn't be necessary, really. Because, again, the impression that Priyanka is probably trying to convey is it's getting worse rather than here's the precise value. So, yeah. Density plot, that's the one. Thank you, Zainab. Oh, my brain.
Oh, yes, thank you. And I feel like the color on the action picker is a little off from the background color. Mm-hmm. And I think it might do to have a little bit of a label like there, say it's like select to change or something. Maybe it's obvious.
Yeah, well, yeah, I found that a bit hard. Like it just seems like those circles, they just kind of have different coloring. The top one to me is completely black, and then I have one that's black and gray and one that's dark gray and light gray, at least.
Yeah, and I don't know the circles are adding any value there.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I don't know, given that we're looking at the big picture, if there's much value in having all three options. I mean, it's nice, but because these are just blurry circles smudged together, I don't see the difference. I see that, yeah, there's a few more gaps in the past, and then when I look at Southern, the gaps are probably even bigger and the circle's smaller, or whatever it may be. But overall, I'm really drawn to the right side, and it's kind of the same everywhere. Okay, let's move on. Next up, we have OJ Green, and this is an example where like the entire tweet is just hashtags, and I think it would be in your own best interest to actually write a comment on, you know, what did you create and maybe why, or what stood out to you, because, you know, you want to make every tweet count. Okay, global temperatures keep going up. What do you think of these multiple line charts?
It's really hard to compare them. I mean, the colors presumably indicate that the temperatures are going up.
I guess, I mean, for me, a logical pattern of reading this is top left to bottom right, and the temperatures are going down because I'm going back in time.
It's decades too, so
Yeah.
it's rolled up.
And the lines are quite thick. I would like the lines to be thinner. So if I read the title, top global temperatures are keep going up, I don't see anything visually that goes up. So why?
You have to make the assumption that the colors, that the darker purple is lower and that the red is higher.
Yeah. And it's just not very intuitive. And then the last square or the last tile, there isn't even a chart. So I think the title doesn't lead me to the kind of chart, like it doesn't gel for me. I also don't see this rise, like 2010s to 2020s. Why is that 2010s to 2020? Why is it not just the 2010s? Because it's inconsistent with the other ones. But I don't really see the rise, and I think if the lines were skinnier, I would see it maybe more. But overall, yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, each line in there, I'm sorry, each line is the year within it. So I guess the assumption is with each line, it's going up.
Yeah. I just don't see it. not as obviously as I would like. Yeah.
You have to work really hard to sort of figure out what's going on.
And I really like the idea. I just think that it could be more obvious, so that the title really like hits home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Beautiful font.
Shall we, because we've got probably about 2 left in us, timing-wise, I'm just going to scroll through and see if there's a type of chart that we haven't looked at yet. Because we've had Jeremy Johnson, actually. That is one I would like to pull out. Okay. So, warming of the Earth. Since the mid-70s, it looks very 70s, that font, at least to me. At least I imagined the 70s to be like that. Yearly temperature deviations have increased on average globally, which is why this time series looks like a thermometer. Oh. I'm trying to wrap my head around this because it's a bit of a mouthful. Yearly temperature deviations have increased on average globally. Like, that's far too complicated. At least for me. Like, I would suggest to always think about lay people's language. So maybe since the mid-70s, on a global level or at a global level, yearly temperatures have, you kind of need to bring in what's the temperature deviation, because that's not explained. It has the explanation lower with the values, but I think the wording needs to be changed and also, which is why this time series looks like a thermometer. This is a big leap to take, at least for me.
No, it's a big leap, and I always think of thermometers as vertical. I don't know why, which would in turn make it easier to read the years.
Yeah. Thermometers, I thought, always go up. At least the outdoors ones, right? That you hang outside your house and you look at.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So a bit confusing. I also don't know what the orange and red wave on the top left are. I'm guessing it's like a heat wave.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think, again, maybe just stick to the red instead of the orange.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, it says in big letters year, but the arrow points to the Earth. The years are, like, that's the years. And I think if you had the years rotated so people can read them, or you have your thermometer, like, everyone can understand that 1880, 2020, like, those are the years. But, yeah, it makes me think, like, no, that's not year, that's a globe. Plus, make sure to always include the data source in your vizzes as well. Okay, let's see if we can do... Yeah, we can do one more. Okay, which one would you like? If I scroll down slowly, which one gets your vote?
I'm on delay, so I won't see your scrolling. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead and pick.
Good point. Rado Zatovic.
That was one I was going to pick, so
yes.
Good on you.
Yes. Yes. He does great work, and this is
really
no exception. Look how amazing this looks. I love the font. Is that like a 50s swimming pool kind of font? That's what it makes me think of. Like, or maybe like a swimsuit ad or something from the 50s. It's very
like
yeah,
wanting to be outside in the warm weather.
Yeah. And I love that you can see how it's getting hotter. I mean, so it's totally right to do it this way, and I like that he's done it, each decade gets a row, because it's nice and neat. I wonder about maybe doing it upside down, so you start at the bottom with the oldest, like the years in the past, because we always pay more attention to the stuff at the top, so that would be one thing he could try.
That would be one way. I'm also curious how it would look oriented, flipped horizontally, but it probably wouldn't fit as well. I wish I could see it on one page without scrolling.
Yeah. I think, horizontal would be interesting too, and just having the decades kind of vertically, so that you literally just tip it on its left side, or tip it 90 degrees towards the left. That could also be interesting.
But it's so nice and tidy. I mean, the spacing in between the tiles, the up and the down arrows. I think it really looks lovely.
I agree. I think the design is really sharp. There's 2 years that stand out to me, 1904 and 1909, because the font is white instead of that kind of dark blue. Mm-hmm. That might be something I would fix, but I know that this is probably automatically colored labels so that they blend in well with the background, but maybe something to look at, because they look like they are special, but I don't think they are. I think it's just the color shade. Okay, well, this is all we have time for today. I'm going to just bring our lovely faces back. And I want to say thanks, Michelle, for joining me and providing your feedback. I know people appreciate it. And thanks everyone who tuned in. The chat was happening. There were a few new people, so welcome to Makeover Monday. And the process from here, just as a quick reminder, we do appreciate even if you can just acknowledge that you've heard the feedback, because it really helps us know that, okay, we're giving this to you and you've heard it, you're going to do something with it. Maybe you won't, but we're not going to force you, but it's great to hear that you've kind of received it. And then tomorrow, so yes, I know it's a quick turnaround, but tomorrow is probably going to be the time when I'm going to pick the favorites. And make sure to always include a picture, because without a picture it's a lot of extra work for me to put the favorites together. And then on Sunday we get a new data set. I already know what it is. I know people are going to get excited. And anything else you want to say, Michelle, before we switch off?
No, I hope everybody has a great end of the week and weekend, and thanks again for tuning in. Thanks,
yes.
Emma.
All right. Well, with that, let's switch it off here and take care, everybody. Stay